It's caused me to pause many times. So even like when I introduce myself to people, do I just say Joe? And sometimes they'll ask me, what do you prefer? So sometimes I feel like I give away my power when I say, just call me Joe. Again, go back to the average Joe.
Yes.
And that's
Ooh, wait. Whoa. You feel like if you don't say Dr. Joe, it takes away your power and you
yes,
just end up being average Joe again.
yes,
Oh my
yes.
God. Let me tell you something. You almost have me wishing my name was Josephina so I could say I am Dr. Joe. Don't call me Joe, short for Josephina, because you're making me just an average Joe. I am Dr. Joe. That is so powerful. Hey, entreleader, and welcome to the 44th episode of the Leaders Lab podcast. I am going to continue on with a very popular segment that we've been having with the Leaders Lab podcast. It started a few months ago with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Frank Larby. We started a mini segment that was called Life After Doctor. And that actually ended up being one of our most popular series on the Leaders Lab podcast. And so I started reaching out to other influential leaders that I was connected to on social media. And one of those influential leaders is our very distinguished guest for today, Dr. Joseph E. Hamlet. He resides in Grandview, Missouri, and has a doctorate degree in business administration, specializing in organizational leadership with a research focus in organizational leadership, organizational justice, and building organizational capacity. He is the owner of Leading to Change Consulting, which is an innovative, forward thinking leadership training and consulting firm. And it's focused on changing the way current and future leaders think about managing their organizations. He is the author of 4 self published books and a contributing author for another book, One Approach to Effective Leadership, a guide to personal growth and development, from ordinary to exceptional. A guide to personal growth and development, the journey continues. A guide to personal growth and development, committed to the process. He was also a contributing author to a cross cultural book titled Leadership and Change Management: The Cross Cultural Perspective, which was released in April 2017. Dr. Hamlet recently retired. So we have a distinguished guest, a retiree here with us. He recently retired as the State Command Chief Master Sergeant for the Missouri Air National Guard, wherein he was the senior enlisted advisor to the Missouri Adjutant General on matters affecting the readiness, training, and professional development of all enlisted members of the Missouri Air National Guard. In his current role, Dr. Hamlet is a technical learning specialist at Honeywell Federal Manufacturing and Technologies, where he is responsible for facilitating system and process training sessions for new operators, inspectors, engineers, and supervisors. He is also an adjunct professor for Southwestern College and Park University, where he teaches business, leadership, and human resource management courses at the undergraduate and graduate levels. Dr. Hamlet has spent most of his adult life motivating and inspiring people to reach beyond what is directly in front of them, to pursue their dreams, and assisting them in reaching their goals. He uses experiences from his own personal story that is a collection of trials and hardships, tragedy, happiness, and success to inspire people of all ages. Our very distinguished guest for today has lived a life of over 20 years of leadership that follows after the leadership principle that denotes the greatest among you is he who serves. He served in positions previously held as janitor, sanitation worker, security guard, line operator, line mechanic, aircraft mechanic, working group leader, quality control inspector, quality assurance inspector, quality assurance supervisor, and maintenance supervisor. And now Dr. Hamlet is a highly sought after mentor, coach, trainer, and public speaker by many institutions in both the military and civilian communities. Through all of his experiences over the years, Dr. Hamlet is able to assist current and future leaders develop into facilitators that will positively impact their organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please help me welcome our guest for today, Dr. Joseph Hamlet. Welcome to the Leaders Lab, sir.
Well, thank you, Dr. Campbell. It is my pleasure, my honor to be here with you on this podcast.
I am, I'm really thrilled. And I had no idea. You know how you can be connected to someone on social media and not know like their full background and everything, but they're so nice, especially on LinkedIn. LinkedIn lets you know when it's people's birthday, and so they'll send
Right.
like birthday messages every year, and you just say, "Oh, thank you." Well, that's what was happening with Dr. Hamlet and I. And then when I thought about this series, I said, I want him to be a guest on the podcast. I don't know if he'll say yes or whatever, but I'm just going to shoot my shot, as we say. I'm just going to ask and see what he says. And I was so honored and shocked. I'm not even going to lie. I was pretty shocked when he said yes.
Well, again,
I was shocked.
I couldn't tell you. For me, this platform has been a godsend. It has opened me up to so many connections like yourself, and so many opportunities that I will continue to say yes. Again, many years ago, I was one of those people that didn't say yes or didn't try. And so now it's almost an immediate response. Yes, yes, yes.
Wow.
Sometimes that gets me in trouble because I get I overextend myself in some cases. So I've had to watch that a little bit, especially in recent years. But it's, again, my honor and pleasure to be here.
Well, we're very happy to have you. And so in this continued mini series, we're talking about life after doctor, life after doctor. I started this series a few months back because there are quite a few people who they want to have the title doctor in front of their name, but maybe they don't know what to expect during the process of achieving that, or what to expect after having doctor. Like, is it easy to get a job? Will I automatically become an entrepreneur? All of these things. And so I wanted to bring to my platform experienced doctors such as yourself, who can kind of share with us your story and some of the things that you've learned along the way that can help current doctors and those who are going through the process. So first off, how did you get started? Did you always know that you wanted to go into your profession as Dr. Joe Hamlet or Dr. Joseph Hamlet, or is it something that just happened?
So for me, it is really, that's the way it happened.
Okay.
I hope this story doesn't get too long, but I think it's very important for me to tell this story. So 2005, I was 40 years old, and at that point, I didn't even have an associate's degree. Okay, so
Wow.
yes. So for me, initially, my thought was, so being in the military, you earn so many college credits, so they give you kind of a head start on your formal education. So I was going to try and capitalize on that because, again, I was 40 years old, 19 years in the military, and I was considered retiring at 20 because you can retire at 20 and get a pension. And so my thought was, if I do decide to, leave the military, I wanted to at least walk away with some type of degree, again, because they gave you such a huge advantage in acquiring those credits. So again, in 2005, I was 40 years old, and the job I was working as a full-time employee, I could have worked until 60, got a decent pension, and said that's it. But I really started to think about, is that what I want my legacy to be? Am I going to have regrets if I continue doing this job? I was an aircraft mechanic at the time, and my body was starting to tell me, hey, you're too old for this kind of stuff. Because, lifting toolboxes up and down stands out in the elements. And so things like that, my body started to say, hey, let's look for a new profession or something different. And so I really wanted to
Mhm.
get into management. So supervisor roles,
Mm.
manager roles. And years ago, as a mechanic, I applied for a supervisor position and I didn't get it. And so I went to this manager and I said, hey, what separated me from my peer who had almost identical credentials except for he had an associate's degree? And he told me at that time that was the difference. He said, if you want to be in a leadership position, if you want people to take you serious, you need to at least get an associate's degree. And, life
Wow.
happened. I couldn't do it. I couldn't go back to school. I had, wife and 3 kids. So the timing was never right. In fact, up to the time I started my program in 2005, I had actually started and stopped school 4 times prior to that. 4 times prior
Wow.
to that. I mean, the first time I actually just enrolled in class. Before classes start, I went back and got a refund. Second time, I actually attended for a few days. Same thing. I went back. The next time I went and attended for 3 weeks, I believe, and then I stopped. And then the fourth time, I actually got through one semester, one class, and then again, life happened. I couldn't continue. So this time was my fifth
Wow.
time. And again, I was at a point in my life where I had to do something different. And so I started, looking at programs, and I found a program, and looking after talking to the advisor, they evaluated my credits I had, and it looked like it was going to take me about 4 years to earn a bachelor's degree. And those, hesitation and all those things started to pour back in, thinking, that's too long. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do this. So into my first class, I really started to look at, you know what, I don't know that I'm going to be able to do this. And at
Mm.
that point, probably midway through the first class, I really started to, I realized I had to look at it differently. And for
Mm.
me, I stopped looking so far down the road. I stopped looking at 4 years to get this degree. And I really started to just concentrate on one class at a time.
Wow.
Then I even broke it down even further. I said, you know what? That's even kind of too far out for me. So I really became a checklist person, somebody that, looked at my syllabus, and I saw,
Okay.
because they were accelerated classes, 5, 6 weeks. And I saw, instead of looking at 5 weeks down the road, I started looking at one week. What do I have to accomplish in that first week? And then I could check
Mm.
all those off. Then the second week. And when I changed my mindset, looked at it that way, and so that I could start to recognize those really small victories, then I started to settle in. And I really didn't think about 4 years, because once I kind of realized, okay, I got a plan of action. I figured this out. Then I started looking at, okay, so this school said 4 years, and I started reaching out, finding other schools, and then I could get it quicker. So I just really started to maneuver my way through my education journey. And so, long story short, again, I finished my first degree. So 40 years old, went back to school. 41, I earned my bachelor's degree. And then it was kind of out of order. So I finished my bachelor's degree first, then the next year, my associate's degree. And then,
Wait, how, I'm sorry, sir.
so,
How were you able to do that?
so
How were you able
again,
to finish the bachelor's first?
because again, the military gave me credit for so many classes. The Air Force actually has a community college of the Air Force. So you earn a lot of credits, for all the technical training you do, the leadership training you do. Those credits get
Wow.
applied. So I gained all of those credits for the associate's degree, but I was lacking one class. It was my speech class. And so again, so I was,
Mm.
progressing toward my bachelor's degree. I didn't want to take a step back to get the speech class. So I took the speech class after I had earned my bachelor's degree. So I had enough credits. I just hadn't, completed that course curriculum, and it was the speech class. So I actually earned my associate's degree in the following year. And then 2 months after that, I earned my master's degree. So I earned my master's degree, or MBA, in about 14 months. And then, so from there, yeah, it's
You know what?
It
Now,
doesn't make
Dr. Hamlet,
sense.
I'm not. I was about to say, listen, Dr. Hamlet. Now, if they, the people on the Leaders Lab know that math is not my absolute favorite subject, and now listening to this timeline and these years, the math isn't quite adding
You're
up to me.
absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. So in June of 2005 is when I started class, or my first
Uh-huh.
class. And
Yeah.
again, I had it. The first school only gave me credit for about 25 or 30 credit hours. Like I said, I
Okay.
started to look at, again, how I could get there, maximize my GI benefits to the military. And so I started doing a lot of research and everything. And so, like I say, so June of 2005 is when I started. May of 2007 is when I earned my bachelor's degree.
Okay.
August of 2008 is when I earned my first associate's. September of 2008 is when I earned my MBA. So I graduated on Sunday with my bachelor's degree, started right into my MBA program, or master's degree at the time, the day after. And then within 14 or 16 months, I finished my master's degree. Then I rolled right into my doctorate degree. And so, again, to make a long story short, I never had any intentions of earning a doctorate degree. That
Wow.
was never in my sights. I was on a radio station after I graduated, I earned my doctorate degree, and the DJ, who was a friend of mine, he said, "Hey, Dr. Hamlet, when did the realization hit you that you were going to, finally realize your dream of becoming a doctor?" And I said, "Wait a minute. I never dreamed. I never
Wow.
ever imagined that I would be sitting here next to you as Dr. Hamlet. I never imagined that in a
Wow.
million years." Again, when I started that education journey, it was just to earn an associate's degree. That was my goal at the time. But I realized, again, my mindset changed, and I started to think, how far can I go with this? What is my
Wow.
limit? And again, so 9 years, 6 months, and like 12 days later, I earned two associate's degrees, bachelor's degree, an MBA, and my doctorate degree. And that was while
You said
working
9 years,
9 years,
six
six
months,
months,
and
12 or
12 days.
13 days. But who's counting? Yes. Yes, because again, I didn't realize at that time I was working full time. So again, I was in the
Mhm.
National Guard, Air National Guard, which meant I had a commitment to the military 1 week in a month. And back in the day, it used to be 2 weeks a year, but that was far extended beyond those.
Mm.
Typically, you'll spend 100 days a year doing military duty. So again, full time job, going to school full time. Um, Military commitment where I deployed several times during this. I drove 72 miles to work one way um, every day. I had a family with three kids that were all active in sports, cheerleading, band, choir, all those things. And so I accomplished all of those things during that time frame, during that 9 years. And so
Wow.
now when people talk about I don't have time, my priorities, this, that, I literally will say, I don't want to hear it. Stop. There is no excuse. Again, my wife was, I
Wow.
was a single, I was a breadwinner. My wife didn't work outside of the home. She raised our three kids to be great adults now, but so I was a sole provider. And so again, I did those
Wow.
things. I was actually attending training, military training, while I was attending school. So again, right now I think back, and I really don't know how I did all those things. I really don't. But now my passion is to help others realize they have that potential, help others see that they have the potential to be great. because that's why the first book I wrote, or the second book I wrote, was From Ordinary to Exceptional. Because I'll admit it, I was an average Joe. I was just like everybody else, working a normal job.
You just said average Joe.
I did that intentionally.
Like literally average Joe.
I was.
Joe. Wow.
And so
Wow.
again, and then you listed off all the accomplishments, the accolades, all the people that I am today. And again, I can sit back and say I never would have imagined that I would be a doctor, that I would have reached the highest level in the military, that I would be an author, that I would be a college professor, that I would be a business owner. Again, average Joe, 40-year-old average Joe, would have never imagined or guessed that I would even actually be here sitting on your show today and discussing this with you. Average Joe would have never imagined any of those things. And so again, for me, that's the power and what education did for me. And people always look at me and say, well, you must have been smart, or you must, and that is the farthest from the truth. I was one of these people that had to read the thing, the document over and over and over, where some people could read it one time, they had it down. That was not me. I had to, really understand it. So for me, it was a challenge. And again, when I went back to school, it was 23 years since I had graduated high school. So
wow.
Yeah. So for me, and I almost quit. I mean, after that first class, and then into my doctorate program, I almost quit. So um, again, when people try to give me excuses and tell me why they can't accomplish it, why they can't do it, there are very many excuses that I'm going to accept. I just, again, if I wouldn't have lived it, I may be able to, kind of agree with you, but I just can't see it. That if you have the will, then there's a way. I mean, if you are willing to stay committed, disciplined, you're going to do it. You're going to achieve it. And so,
that's beyond impressive. 9 years, 6 months. I had to write it down. I had to write it down because I'm like, there is someone now. Of course, as I was explaining in our greeting, and when I first asked you to be a part of the Leaders Lab mini series, and I of course, this is a show for millennial entre leaders. However, I've been looking at our statistics, our stats, and we have listeners from various demographics, all different age levels. And so I know that there is someone listening to you right now who doesn't necessarily fall in line in the category of millennial. And they're saying he went back to school. He went to school at 40. And 9 years later, 9.5 years later, well, let's make sure we say accurately. 9 years, 6 months, and 12 to 13 days later, he was Dr. Joe. I'm gonna let you know right now that I am the subtitle for Life After Doctor is from 40-year-old average Joe to Dr. Joe. That is from average Joe to Dr. Joe. That is, I'm impressed. I'm inspired, and I'm sure that our listeners are inspired as well. I mean, the fact that you went to school 5 times first before it actually stuck.
Right.
What was there anything? I mean, aside from life happening to you, was there anything that made you feel like when you were going to school all those times before, like, this is just not for me? Like, do you think there was something more than just like life happening to you that made you say, you know what, I'm going to quit. I'm going to go back and get a refund. Like,
absolutely. For one, I am very impatient. And so it is very hard sometimes. That's why I say when I start to look too far down the road, I just don't believe I have the capacity or the bandwidth to stay the course. And again, I proved it over and over again. But back then, when I would look at that, I would always see the end state. And I never really thought about how to get there. And so like this last time, that's what I had to finally figure out.
Mm.
Again, today, from where I was back in 2005, it has been a journey. Again, but I haven't mapped all these things out, but I've done a much better job of, laying the outline down and then trying to follow it. And again, there are life changes and things happen, but I've tried to
Yeah.
follow a more deliberate plan. Where in the past, I couldn't do that. I couldn't see myself doing it. Again, it was just always about, I got to be there tomorrow and the next day. So for me, that was a difficult thing for me to do, to almost sit back and wait. And so now that's still difficult for me to do, because I know,
Mm.
once I get going, it's hard for me to stop. I don't want to stop. And that's really why I kept going, to
Okay.
finish out the doctorate degree, because I knew if I stopped at any time, if I said, okay, I got my bachelor's degree, I'm going to take a week or a month or 6 months. So that's the other thing. I went 9 years straight. I only took 1 month
Wow.
off. And that was, again, because I was ready to quit the doctorate program. I had gotten up
Mm.
and through 3 years through the doctorate program, and I was at the point where I wrote my concept paper. And you've been through the process, and the concept paper is
Hmm.
where you're writing down your proposal basically, and what your subject is about. And so you pour a lot of heart and soul in that. And for me, it was a 60-page
Yeah.
concept paper. And up to that point, my mentor, I'd send it to him, and he would, hey, fix this or add this, take this out, just brief suggestions or recommendations. Well, when I received my concept paper, there was like 150 recommendations, and it was almost like a kid just learning to speak English, and all these red marks in my paper, and I just felt destroyed, demolished.
Wow.
Again, because the other side of that was, you only had 2 opportunities to submit your concept paper, and you were done. You were basically kicked out of the program. And
Wow.
so, yeah, so for me, I just, again, spent 3 years of my life working on my doctorate degree, because I excelled really fast through my master's degree. And so I really gave
Mhm.
myself a timeline of 3
Yeah.
years. And so when I
Uh-huh.
reached that 3 years, and I was like, received this paper, it was a blow to me. It really was. And I actually reached out to the college and I said, hey, can I have just take a break, 60 days, to kind of think about this, re-energize? Because again, I'd been going to school for 5 or 6 years by now, and I was like, I just really need a break. And the school refused it. They weren't going to give me a break. And so I said, well, my only choice is I have to leave. And I said, so I've earned 30 plus credit hours, plus I already came in with an MBA. Is there a chance I
Mhm.
can walk away with a master's degree? And she started doing the calculations. Well, to get your master's degree, you need to take another 5 or 6 classes. And I said, no, I can't do that. I'm
Right.
done. I'm spent. And so I said, if you don't allow me to take at least 30 days, I'm going to have to walk away from this program. And I was really at that point. That was where I was. And they said, okay, we'll give you 30 days. And the other thing that stopped or derailed that decision was my wife, because I told her, I
Mm.
said, hey, I got my master's degree. I think I'm done. And she looked at me and she gave me that, you are not being, and yeah, she gave me that, and that was it. I
I love
straightened
it.
back up, and I continued. But I
Oh,
go back.
I love
Well, I say this too. There's no way I could have done this by myself. Like I said, I had a wife and 3 kids, and without her, without them understanding, because I took a lot of time from them, locked up in my room and doing homework assignments and things like that. And so when I graduated, I made it a point to let them all know that this was not me. This is ours, because without
Wow.
their support, there is no way I could have done that. There's no way I
Yeah.
could have did it. And so
Yeah.
I thank her every day. And so we share in the doctor title. I mean, we really do, because
Oh, she's doctor too. She's Dr. Hamlet as well.
she's Dr. Hamlet as well. When we talk and when we meet
Listen, we
people,
need Mrs. We need Miss Dr. Mrs. Hamlet. We need to get her on the show as well. Wow. So, I mean, did you get them at the same time, or
no, no, no,
you
she's
went
not a
first
no,
and
no.
then she?
She's not an actual doctor. She didn't go through the
Uh,
program, but she shares
okay.
in my title as
Yeah, she.
the time and effort, the energy that it took
Yeah.
to get it. She is,
Yeah.
in my eyes, it's equally hers too.
That
Because
is
again,
beautiful.
she without her commitment to ensuring our household remained, the same. Like I say, I deployed, I did all these things, and I was absent for basically 9 years, because I was on a mission to complete that doctorate degree. So I give
Yeah.
her a lot of credit. So
I think a lot of people I think a lot of people fail to realize the amount of sacrifice that
yes,
you actually have to give in order to successfully complete a doctoral program.
absolutely,
Many people, they think you can still have your same social life or your same,
absolutely.
there's so many things that we sacrifice. Birthdays,
Yep,
at least the major holidays we would continue, but even sometimes during the holidays you might have still been working on research.
absolutely, absolutely.
It's a lot. It's a
Yes,
lot. But that persistence and having family and friends who understand that, yeah, I may not be around as much as before. It doesn't mean that, I don't love you or I'm
right,
not supporting you. It's just that
right.
this really is something in my life that I need to accomplish. And it does take focus and discipline and determination.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
wow. So you completed that 9 years and 6 months and 12 to 13 days. And I'm gonna remember that. I am not gonna forget that now. Like that's ingrained within now. What have been some of the, if I could ask, what has been some of the highs and lows that you've experienced after receiving the title doctor?
So a lot of highs, in my eyes, in
Okay.
my opinion. So one of the first highs was uh, the hooding ceremony, because again,
Mhm.
going so rapidly through all my degrees, I never, participated in any of the ceremonies. The bachelor's, the
Okay.
master's degree. It was not until my doctorate, finishing that program, I flew out to Arizona to be part of that. And when I heard my name announced, Dr. Hamlet, uh, that was such I don't know how to say it, but it was one of the best feelings I've ever had. Aside from
Wow.
watching my three kids being born, marrying my wife, those type of things. But this was just,
Yeah.
again, because again, I being an average Joe, this was not my dream. This was not one of those things that I knew I was going to achieve. It was one of these things that I cannot believe that I am Dr. Hamlet. So again, that will
Wow.
remain one of the highs for me, just to hear my name as Dr. Hamlet. Again, because I'm the
Mhm.
first doctor as far as my siblings, my first cousins, second, third cousins. So to be a
Wow.
doctor, is huge. Then, of course, again, being able to meet people like you, amazing people like you, and to be asked to be part of your project and things like that. Again, average Joe would have never been able to experience any of these things if he wasn't Dr. Hamlet right now. Again, to make it to the level in the military that I did. 1% of the population serves in the military, past, current, and future. I mean, 1% of our population will ever serve in the military. And so to
Wow.
make it to the rank I did, that's another 1%. So I was 1% of 1% to make it to that rank. So again,
Wow.
another thing that, very few people will ever experience. I was at that level. And again, it all started with me following my, going towards my doctorate degree, working towards that, I wouldn't have been able to experience that. Again, sometimes it was funny when I went to my brother's. The other thing that this did for me, so what was pretty unique or really cool was the fact that my baby sister, who's 10 years younger than me, she actually, she's the one who actually got me started or returning to school or going to school, because she was 10 years younger than me. Right after high school, she started school, but she wasn't able to finish. And so she got married, 3 kids, and she went back to school. And I was like, wow, I have no excuse. What, I'm watching my baby sister do this, and she's got a husband, 3 kids, she's working, and I was thinking to myself, and I'm really not doing anything. But what was so amazing about that journey was the fact that she graduated with her undergrad degree on Saturday. I graduated the following Sunday, and my mom was here to see that. That was so cool. Yes.
Wow.
Again,
Oh, wow.
yeah, that again, I couldn't even have imagined or pictured something occurring to that effect. And then
Wow.
my brother, I think I had graduated my doctorate degree, and he finished his bachelor's degree. My younger brother finished his bachelor's degree shortly after. So what's again unique about that situation is I've got 2 sisters and 1 brother. My mom, of course, had her high school diploma. My dad had a 9th grade education. And so the fact that
Wow.
3 of his 4 kids, at least earned a bachelor's degree. So again, if you think back to, the circumstances I'm in, I can't get out of that. I can't change the cycle. Again, that is all untrue. Again, us 3 siblings are living proof that you can change, your environment and do more than your parents did or your family members did. So again, just another example. But again, it's once you get that fire ignited in yourself, it starts to affect those people around you, and that's that's a high for me, because again, all 3 of my kids all have a college degree now, but my oldest son, struggled his first year in college, and that was before I actually went back to school. I went back to school when he was in his 2nd semester, I believe, in college, and he struggled his first year. And I think he had that same realization. All dad is asking me to do, or all mom and dad is asking me to do, is to go to school. My dad is deploying for the military. He's driving 75 miles one way, and it helped him refocus, and he finished his degree. And so then the 2 younger siblings followed suit, and they all earned their degrees. So again, and then what's also funny about this whole situation is the fact that all of us were going to school at the same time. My kids are all 2 years apart. And so my oldest was in college. My middle son was just enrolling in college. And then my daughter was actually taking college level courses in high school. So we were all going to school at the same time, all 4 of us. So again, all these commonalities, all these similarities. So again, one of the highs again is to be able to impact those people around you, to help them reach their goals, to be that example for them. Other highs, like I say, just having the opportunity to be in the different venues I've been in. And like I said, been on a radio station several times now, local radio stations. Very similar to what we're doing today, just talking about making it to this level. So again, just having the opportunity to do those type of things. Now, on the flip side of this, some of the lows, coming out of college, I really expected that, I'd get the great job and people would recognize me as doctor, and, I wouldn't have a problem, getting a job and those type of things. And that's where this has been one of the most disappointing, discouraging points to earning a doctorate degree. The fact that you're often labeled as overqualified,
Yeah.
or they question why you're applying for a position at this level and those type of things.
Yeah.
So it's caused me to pause many times. So even like when I introduce myself to people, do I just say Joe? Do you know? And sometimes they'll ask me, what do you prefer? And so
Mhm.
sometimes I feel like I give away my power when I say just call me Joe. Again, go back to the average Joe,
Yes.
and that's
Ooh, woo, wait. Ah, whoa. Okay. See, Dr. Hamlet, now I literally just got chills right there. I just got some chill bumps right there. You said when people giving you the option, right, or giving people the option of calling you doctor or just Joe, you feel like if you don't say Dr. Joe, it takes away your power and you
yes,
just end up being average Joe again.
yes,
Oh my
yes.
God. Let me tell you something. That was deep, sir. You almost have me wishing my name was Josephina so I could say I am Dr. Joe. Don't call me Joe, short for Josephina, because you're making me just an average Joe. I am Dr. Joe. That is so powerful.
And the reason I say that, because and I tell people this all the time, I don't want to come in and basically kick the door down and say I'm Dr. Joe Hamlet. I'm
Right.
I'm immediately going to get the hesitation, the awkward looks, like who does this guy think he is? But at the same time, when I'm around peers, and that maybe that's the other thing, maybe I need to find new peers. But this particular instance, I was at an event, a conference of some sort, with a group of people. Some of the people I knew, others I didn't. We went out to dinner that night. And so I'm talking to the friends that I knew. There's probably 15 or 20 of us, having micro conversations at different tables. And so I was talking to the people that I knew, and they were asking, "Hey, how's the last class you taught? How'd it go?" And they knew me, so they were having a conversation. So I said, "Hey, I'll be back." Went to the restroom. I came back, and as I approached the table, like I said, we had probably 5 or 6 tables, lined up against this back wall, and now everybody's staring at me. I mean, it was almost like, who is this guy walking in? I mean, and it was almost like when you walk into those, the movies you see where people walk into a country bar and it's a black guy and the music
Yeah,
stops
yeah.
and everybody's looking at you,
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
just sitting there like, what is going on? And so one of the guys that knew me, he said, "Hey, I got a question for you." And I was like, "What's going on?" He said, "So you're adjunct professor, right? You teach." I said, "Yeah." He said, "So do you have a master's degree or a doctorate degree?" And I said, "I have a doctorate degree." And the remainder of the night, it was like I was under a light. It was like everybody on the other side was on the other side of the table, and I was just singled out over here. And some people were hesitant, didn't want to talk to me. Other people were just kind of, leaning in and out, like I want to hear, but I don't. It was one of the most awkward feelings, again, for me to endure that. And it's like, I'm I'm still the same guy. I'm still Joe, the guy that you all were talking to before I went to the restroom. So what changed? Just
Right.
because I'm now a doctor? So
Wow.
I've been in, a lot of different situations where I say my name or say my title sometimes, and it just is received the wrong way, or
Mm.
I'm no longer one of them. I become they
Yeah.
or them. So it just so I that's why I say when people ask me, it's even funny, when I'm with a group of people, say we're meeting someone for the first time. People will start
Mhm.
going around the room and they'll say, "Hey, my name is Jim Johnson. I got a master's degree, blah blah blah." And everybody says, "Hey, I got a master's degree. I got an MBA." And so I typically will get to me, and it's like, do I say I'm a doctor?
Right.
You
Right.
know,
What should I say?
yeah, because now, because everybody's looking at me like, and then if I say I'm doctor, then I'm like, oh wow. I mean, it is. I've felt that burn, like people, just looking at me like I'm an alien. But and so I've been really, I've watched how I do that because again, so a lot of times if I'm just meeting you, we'll have a conversation. And a lot of
Mhm.
times we'll have 3 or 4 conversations before they find out I'm a doctor, because I don't want to
Yeah.
lead with that and then they change. So
Yeah.
I try and I am still Joe. And my mom told me this before she passed. She said it, 100 times because she had dementia, so she didn't remember saying it, but it just rang um,
Mm.
in me all the time that be true to who you are. And so I
Yeah.
know I'm still Joe. I am still average Joe that has achieved certain things, but I'm still that person. So I really struggle with that, especially in new environments and meeting people, because I'm not sure. And a lot of times it's their insecurities, but then it leads to something different, jealousy and those type of
Yeah.
things. So I
Yeah.
that's the one negative that is haunted me for 7 years now as Dr. Hamlet. So, and part of the reason I was able to get to Doctor Two is because people were challenging me. People were so again. The people would think that he made it to doctor level, so yeah, it was easy, and think doors started opening,
Mm.
and not the case, not the
Right.
case. It
Right.
just I just had to continue to prove myself. And that was really a lot of the
Mm.
motivation for me to get to that level, because I kept hearing no when I would apply for a position and things like that. So I just kept pushing because I kept thinking, I'm going to get to a point where you can't say no because I'm going to have so many
Right.
credentials. I'm going to be
Uh-huh.
over the top. You won't be able to say
Uh-huh.
no. And that's really what happened in my military career. That's how I made it, as high as I did, because when I would interview for a position, my resume would just blow everybody's. You could tie 2 or 3 resumes together, and they still
And
didn't
it's still
match my
not equal yours.
credentials or anything.
Wow.
So I that was part of my driving force too, because I kept hearing no, and I just kept saying, eventually you're going to have to say yes. You're going to
So
have to
you were
say yes.
intentionally trying to be overqualified.
Absolutely. I was pushing them to the limit where if you said no, people are gonna look at you like, well, what is your,
What's wrong
I
with
mean,
you?
literally,
Right.
because yeah, how can you say no? And so then people start to
Wow.
question who they are and their ability
Mm.
to lead and their ability to make choices and decisions. And that's really what it did. It started to stir things up. And I started to hear my name come up in a lot of different ways. I mean, in
Mm.
fact, when I was selected, for that senior enlisted position, I went to our state headquarters, and one of the gentlemen came up to me and he said, "So now that you earned your doctorate degree, are you going to expect other people to get their degrees?" And it again, that insecurity thing, the expectation now that the level has risen, because now I'm at that level, and that's the other drawback to that whole thing. If they put me in place, who follows me?
Mm.
And so
Wow.
again, I've had to do a lot of thinking about my next moves and how it impacted people. And yeah, it has been a journey, to say the least.
Dr. Joe, you said you've actually mentioned this, I think maybe once or twice. You said the dealing with other people's insecurities, their insecurities. Have you noticed that maybe there was a way that you started to navigate through the insecurities that others had being projected maybe on you? So I guess if I would say it again, have you had to or how have you, not have you had to, because you just said that you did, but how have you navigated through the insecurities of others when they're speaking to you or talking to you in any form like that?
Uh, So again, having gone through a program where you had to do a lot of research, a
Uh-huh.
lot of fact finding, a lot of
Yeah.
investigation, um,
Yeah.
I relied on my expertise in those arenas, those areas, to have those sometimes candid conversations with people, especially people at higher levels, to help them
Hmm.
understand, some of the decisions they're making, the impact it's going to have on the organization as a whole. Because that's always been my number one goal, was to make things better for everybody, not just me. I didn't want to just rise to the top and sit there and look down upon people. No, I wanted to bring as many
Right.
people as I could. So helping people understand, again, I had my own reasons why I was doing it, but it never
Hmm.
came off that way. When I
Mm.
would present myself, when I would talk to others, because especially later in my military career, I talked to a lot of younger people. And when they're asking me, hey, should I earn a doctorate degree and things like that? How do I navigate? And those are the type of conversations that I would have with them. It's not
Mm.
directed toward anybody. It's directed toward more the culture, the organization, trying to help people open their eyes to what's happening in front of them. And so having some of those conversations, like, why does it take me to become a doctor before I'm selected for a position? Why does it take me,
Wow.
to get to this level, when people that I'm competing with, again, don't stack up nowhere near? And so it really made leaders especially look at, you're right, why are we doing things this way? And so that's really what I wanted to do, is to shine a light on it, inequalities happening in our organizations and with people. And so, and even when my commanding general, who I reported to in my last job, that's what he said. He said, you made me see people. He talked about, all these other people. You were a great officer. You did this and that. But he said to me, he said, Chief Hamlet helped me see people. And he said, I had never really viewed people that way, because his job was a commanding general. So his job was
Right.
always, hey, they got to get the job done. They got to sacrifice. And so I help humanize our members. They're not just 12,000 people, subjects or pawns, but they're actually people. And so I was really, I never would imagine he said that, but he did in front of, all these people when he retired. So that's when I knew that that's the type of impact that I was having. And that was my intention, to make people think about, their actions, especially
Mm.
at the leadership level. And so I feel like walking away, I did my job, what I was supposed to do. So I can always um, believe that I did what I was supposed to do at the end of the
Okay.
day. Yeah.
So, Dr. Joe, what advice would you give to someone who maybe they were in your exact same shoes? They were like, listen, school is not for me. I've tried it. I don't like it. I don't want to do it anymore. But maybe there's something deep down on the inside of them that says, listen, you're called to more. Not saying that, everyone absolutely has to go to education, go through educational
Right.
systems or anything like that to be great, to have their greatest potential, because there are some who, like you said, your father, they have ninth grade education, but they still ended up being leaders
Absolutely.
in
He
their
is one of
communities,
the,
in their
yes,
sectors. So it's
the most
so it's
brilliant
not
people
about
I
that.
know. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But
So
there might be someone who does want to, deep down inside, they do want to do it, but they're, for whatever reason, they're saying no.
and this is what happened to me. Again, I had an idea of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, but it wasn't until I really started taking a look at myself. I really started to reflect on who I was and where I wanted to go. And again, reflecting on the four times previous that I didn't, um, finish or continue the education journey, and I realized the impact that it had on me. And for me to make a difference, I knew I had to educate myself. I knew I had to do more. So like you said, maybe not necessarily go the path of, getting degrees, but some type of certification or some way that you further your intellect. That's the biggest thing, is to acquire more knowledge somehow. You may want to be a mechanic for 30, 40 years and retire. But if you're going to do that, find out as much as you can about your specific area of expertise. Gain as much knowledge as you can, because right now you may not feel like I want to be a leader, supervisor, whatever. Things change, life changes, life happens. So this is one of the things I tell people a lot. So like I've been in industries where, and this is the other part of my motivation to continue, was I've been in 4 or 5 companies where I've been laid off. I've been displaced.
Oh, wow.
They've moved out of the state. They closed the doors completely. My last job, they did a reduction in force for salary personnel. I was one of those people. So again,
Wow.
I've always been in a kind of a survivor mode, because again, I'm sole provider for a wife and 3 kids. I have to earn an income. So I have to be in a position, and for instance, there's 200 people at a company, a factory. You work in the manufacturing industry. They close the doors. All 200 of you are likely going to go to the next manufacturing company. You all have the same credentials. Who are they going to hire? So again, if I've gotten a certificate, if I've furthered my education, I've done some additional things, then I can at least start to separate myself from that pack of 200. And that's what I tell
Yeah.
people. Even if the industry you're in is great, what happens if tomorrow it's not there? What do you do?
Wow.
Are you in a
Wow.
position to move to the next level or to the next thing? And so when people hear that and they're like, you're right. They may have been, blessed to be in an organization where they've been there 20 years, but I see it again. I've worked for several companies that I thought everything was great, and then they have the all hands meeting. They say, "Hey, we're closing the doors in 6 months. You got to go. What do you do?" And I saw so many people fall apart. What am I going to do? I
Mm.
can't take care of my family. And so for me, I've experienced that. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, it helped me build that resilience, and to be expecting those type of things. It's not a good feeling to be in.
No,
But
it's
again,
not.
it also has helped me to build who I am, because I was always expecting that. So that's what I try and relate to people. Yeah, things could be going great today, and very, very similar in our military environment. For a lot of years, to make it to the rank of E8 and E9, the 2 highest enlisted ranks, you didn't have to have a degree. In 2015, they changed that requirement to where you had to
Oh.
have at least an associate's degree. And
Mhm.
that exact same thing started happening. Those, people that were supposedly grandfathered in, because
Mhm.
this is one of the movements I started. So
Okay.
when we got to that point and you didn't have a, that 2-year degree, and, a lot of people at that level were thinking, well, I can move to the next thing. I can just continue to ride. And I started, the movement. Hey, if you're not willing to further your education, again, our Air Force schools are great. You're so close to your associate's degree. If you choose not to get your associate's degree, then you're choosing to be lazy, not
Wow.
compliant. And so why do we need you? And so
Mm.
that changed a lot of things. So we stopped allowing people to continue to further their career. And we, told them, hey, if you don't get your associate's degree, then you have to leave. It's no different than, a change in a work environment at a corporation. New equipment comes in, and as an operator, you only did this before. Now this new equipment comes in, and your requirement is to do this as well.
Mhm.
And if you don't learn how to do it, you lose your job. The same
Mm.
thing. The requirement is there. And if you fail to meet those minimum requirements or don't want to meet those minimum requirements, then why do we need you? And so
Wow.
that changed our organizations. And so, like I say, when I left with some of those transitioning happening. Again, because the impact of that is these people up here are sitting riding 30, 35 years. Those young airmen coming in can't move because the guard is totally different than the active duty because people basically have to die before you can move up. And so if you're up
Mm,
here, you're holding up a lot of people. And so that's some of those conversations that I have with leaders that, again, you want to take care of your people up here, but at the same time, you're losing 2 or 3 people down here for that one person that you're holding on to. And again, if I got a person that doesn't want to change or improve themselves, then what example are they going to be to that airman below them when the requirement is now to have that associate's degree? So
yeah.
that's what
Wow.
I tell people. Today may be great. You have to think beyond today. You have to think beyond what's directly in front of you. You have to be
Yeah.
willing to kind of view down the road a
Yes.
little bit.
Yes. Thinking beyond today.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so I had to, that was good to me. I was like, I need to write that down, thinking beyond today. Because you're right. Sometimes we get very comfortable with
Yes.
our today, not
Yes.
realizing that tomorrow can be flipped upside down. Tomorrow can be
Absolutely.
flipped upside down, and then you have to try to figure out what you're going to do next. So
Right.
I appreciate you saying that. So Dr. Joe, we're coming down to the very end, but I have one final question for you.
Okay.
In let's say 60 seconds or less, okay, 1 minute. I want you to answer this for me. What is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess? What is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess?
And that's a very difficult question to just limit it to one. It really is.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I'll give you one, but again, I think there should be a lot more. So I would
Of course.
say self-awareness. I would say that's probably the
Mm,
number one characteristic for me because if I'm self-aware, I'm going to realize or understand how what I do, my actions, affect those that I lead. I'm going to
yes.
understand myself, my strengths, my limitations, my weaknesses.
Yes.
I'm going to be aware of those things so that I don't continue to falter on my weaknesses or I'm not going to continue to fall down. So just being aware so that I can address those situations as they come. But like I said, there are so many others that empathy, compassion, those type of things that I would really
Mhm.
still think a good leader should have. But self-awareness, I think that's probably a good start that you're trying. And for your journey to begin, you have to understand who you are. So you have to be self-aware. Going back to the
Absolutely.
question you said or asked about how do you get those people to think about tomorrow? And it's being self-aware, understanding where you are today, and if you want to go somewhere, what's it going to take to get there?
I love it. I love it. Listen, Dr. Joseph Hamlet, this has been such an honor to have you with us here on the Leaders Lab podcast. I honestly, I was excited I was very, very comfortable just sitting back and listening to all of this wisdom that has just been pouring out of you and including your experience. I'm serious. Listen, I know I'm titling this Life After Doctor, from 40-year-old average Joe to Dr. Joe. Listen, that's a book. You hear me? From average Joe to Dr. Joe. That is I mean, you're already an author. You
Right.
might as well go ahead and add it to the.
You might be right. I hadn't even considered that as a title, but you might be right. I agree.
Listen, I would buy it. As a matter of fact, when you finish it, let me know because I'm buying it. Okay, I'm just,
Okay, I
and
will.
I'm gonna come back on the Leaders Lab and say, you guys remember when Dr. Joseph Hamlet was on the show and I told him he needs to write a book called From Average Joe to Dr. Joe? Here it is. Here it is.
Okay.
Make sure you
All
purchase your
right.
copy.
Well, I'm going to hold you to
Um,
that then. Okay.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It has been, like I said, it's been quite a privilege to have you on with us today, sir. And I just want to let the people know how can they get in contact with you if someone wants to reach out to you. Maybe they want a bit of advice, or maybe they want to work with your company or become a client. How can our people reach out to you?
So again, they can reach me at l2cconsulting.com, or they can actually reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very responsive on LinkedIn as well. So just look up Joseph Hamlet, or you can also reach out to me on my personal email, joehamlet@yahoo.com. I would love to hear from you. So please feel free to reach out to me.
So you said that is l2cconsulting.com.
Consulting.com. Yes. Info. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Info at L2C. Info.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Okay, I understand.
There you
So
go.
the email address. All right. So
Yes.
we have his personal email address, which is joehamlet@yahoo.com. For those of you who are listening to the audio version of the podcast and you can't actually see on the video version, we have his information displayed also in the show notes, as well as in the description box on YouTube, if you're watching that way. And you can also visit him on his Facebook page, which is L2C Consulting.
Yes.
L2C Consulting.
Yes.
Well, listen, again, Dr. Joseph Hamlet, thank you so much for being our very honored and distinguished guest for this 44th episode of the Leaders Lab podcast.
Again, thank you for reaching out and allowing me to be part of all of this. I couldn't thank you enough for this opportunity. So thank you. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure. It has been my absolute pleasure. Don't forget that you can connect with me on social media as well. You can find me everywhere at Dr. Charity TV. On Facebook, it is at Dr. Charity TV page, but you can also find my information in the description box. If you're listening on the for the audio version, you can find it in the podcast show notes. And I just really want to say that I appreciate all of you for tuning in every single Wednesday. And for those of you who come back and you listen to the all of the episodes, maybe you binge listen or binge watch on YouTube, I want to say thank you so much. And I appreciate you guys. I look forward to seeing you next week in the lab.
Thank you for listening to the Leaders Lab podcast. Visit our website at www.drcharitytv.com.